Welcome back to Security Architecture in the Real World series. I'm Saba. I practice as a security architect since more than a decade now. Closely work with different security teams and businesses as well. In this series, I talk about how security actually behaves inside enterprise, not how it looks in a vendor slide. Right. So today's topic is zero trust in legacy environments. Not the marketing version, but the painful version. Because most organization didn't start in the cloud, right? So they inherited systems that are 10, 15, and sometimes 20 years old as well. And zero trust collides directly with that reality. So let's start with how zero trust is usually presented. So this is a slide deck version of zero trust. Verify every request, no implicit trust, strong identity everywhere, microsegmentation, continuous validation. Looks clean, looks simple, right? So every vendor diagram shows perfect enforcement points and beautiful identity flows. But this assumes something very dangerous. It assumes your environment is completely modern, which is usually not the case everywhere, right? So let's talk about what most enterprises actually have, the reality. So here's the real inheritance: flat internal networks, shared service accounts, legacy apps with not even authentication, hard coded IP whitelist or allow lists, your zero device identities. Many applications were built when perimeter security was considered as more than enough. Right? I'm talking about 15, 20 years before. Once you are inside the network, everything trusts you and you trust everything. Zero trust tries to remove that assumption. So legacy architecture depends on it. So that's the core conflict here, what we're talking about. So let me walk you through a typical environment here, right? We call it a real world scenario, maybe. Imagine this. You have a hybrid setup in your organization. Some workloads are in the cloud, some are still in your data center, and there is a old ERP system. Some new microservices consume the old ERP system's API. Through API, it consumes some data from there. Internal traffic is completely trusted. The SOC visibility mostly stops at the firewall level itself, and the east-west traffic, it's almost invisible. So, on papers, this organization says they are moving towards zero trust. In reality, internal access is still wide open. Now, let's see how attackers love this setup, right? The setup what we just discussed. Let's see how attackers are going to love it. The attack usually starts simple. Imagine a user get phished, right? So that gives the attacker internal network access. From there, they reach a legacy application server. As we already discussed, no authentication between hops. From that server, they move straight to database or any sensitive systems, for instance. This is not advanced hacking, right? So this is walking through the open doors. So obviously attackers will love this, no? So each hop trusts the previous one here. So that's implicit trust in action. So where exactly does zero trust fail here? So zero trust breaks because legacy applications cannot enforce identity. They don't support modern authentication because they're legacy. They don't support MTLS. Service accounts are shared across multiple systems, and the network is still treated as trusted. either internally, of course, but still the network is still treated as trusted. Monitoring is only perimeter focused. So even if you deploy zero trust tools, the architecture underneath, right, cannot support that model. You're, it looks like you're building a modern security on top of all the legacy assumptions, right? So that never ends well. And this leads to a very common enterprise mistake. See, organization by ZTNA, they add MFA to VPN, they update a few policies, then they announce they have implemented zero trust. But all they have done is harden the perimeter. That's the only thing what they did, right? So inside the network, everything still trust everything else. So this is not zero trust, right? So this is perimeter security with a better understanding or better branding maybe. So what does zero trust actually look like? So real zero trust is architectural, as I already mentioned. Every service has an identity. Workloads authenticate to each other using MTLS. Shared accounts are eliminated completely, and segmentation happens by application, not the VLAN level. So, also like the device posture is continuously evaluated, and telemetry exists everywhere. Access decisions, right? All these are identity based, not network based. So this require a platform changes, right? So not just product means if you're inserting a product and say I follow zero trust, that's not going to happen. So this requires the changes from the platform level itself. But nobody converts a legacy enterprise overnight, right? We cannot do that, of course. So how do you migrate? So you don't flip a switch. You start with critical applications. You print legacy systems with identity aware proxies, right? So you have a legacy system and just keep identity aware proxies in front of that. You introduce some service identity gradually. You reduce flat network trust in phases. You cannot do it overnight. So do it in phases based on the criticality. Then you start measuring the east-west traffic also, right? And zero trust is actually a journey of controlled reduction of implicit trust. Again, as I mentioned, overnight you cannot do that, but do it in a controlled manner in phases way. But end of the day, it's a journey, right? Where you end up like controlling and reducing all the implicit trust what you had in your legacy. So I don't say it's a big bang project altogether, but when it is done properly, here's what changes. Lateral movement drops, legacy system becomes isolated. The SOC finally sees all the internal activities. Compromises have a very small or like a smaller blast radius, I'll say. And zero trust becomes operational, not just theoretical. So security stopped being perimeter based, which used to be the case in our legacy system, what we saw, and it will start becoming identity driven. So, which brings us to the most important lesson here. Zero trust is not a product, and zero trust is not a checkbox as well. So, zero trust is an architectural transformation altogether. So, if your internal systems still trust the network, you don't have zero trust. You have to believe me, right? You just renamed your firewall. That's it. So, that's it for this episode of Security Architecture in the Real World. In the next episode, we'll talk about SOC visibility in microservices environment and why most detection strategies completely miss the internal attacks. Till then, signing off. Thanks for watching.